Well, I think I'm going to get going just to respect those of you that are on time. Would you mind shutting the door just so, because we are videotaping this? So my name's Patty Farmer, and I'm a career counselor in the Career Development Center, and I want to welcome everybody to our workshop, Taking a Year Off After Graduation, and we're lucky to have a couple speakers who are going to share their experiences with you. So I'm going to get going with my PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to go pretty fast because I really think the richness of the workshop is the speakers, not me going through a PowerPoint presentation. But the information that I have is helpful just to give an overview. So taking a year off, oh, thank you. Good thing we've got. Okay. Welcome, and as you come in, if you wouldn't mind, we have a sign-up sheet that's going around. We like to keep track of where students heard about the workshop, but welcome, come on in. We're just starting. So the goals of the workshop are to give you an opportunity to consider the pros and cons of taking a year off between college, graduation, and quote-unquote real life. And that's definitely, a very subjective title. To offer ideas and resources for further information. To help you understand that taking a year off should be a carefully researched and planned event, not just a spur of the moment or default decision. So it's really nice that you're all here to learn more about, to give it some forethought as part of the decision process. And then how to minimize the negative consequences for future, like going to graduate school or going into a career-related job. Welcome, come on in, you can have a seat. So why take a year off? Does anyone want to just throw out a couple reasons why you're thinking of taking a year off after you complete your undergraduate degree at SPU?
Residency.
Okay, residency. That's a great reason.
You need recovery, like burnout.
Burnout, recovering from burnout. Very good. Anybody else?
Travel.
Make money. Travel. Perfect. Okay, travel. Exactly. We just have a few reasons that we put down, like to gain experience to build a stronger resume, solidify career goals, identify appropriate graduate programs, have a unique experience before settling down in the, it's more like the 8 to 6 job world, or the grind of going to graduate or professional school. And then again, having the opportunity to give back to society, to serve God's people. Also establishing residency, which came up, and then loan forgiveness for or opportunities that will help subsidize grad school. So I think that came up, moving to a different state and establishing residency. There are some programs where, I'm not sure if Teach for America has this, but I know there's a program at Loyola Marymount in LA that offers a combination of doing something very similar to Teach for America, and you get a master's degree at the same time. So there's programs out there where you can combine serving and getting an advanced degree. And again, giving yourself a little break between college and grad school by having more time to study for GREs, take courses to improve your GPA or fulfill certain requirements, work to pay off loans or save for grad school, travel to another city, state, country, and have fun. So then on the other side, there's always the consideration of, well, why are some reasons that you're sort of thinking, well, maybe I should go right into the real world or go continue on with my education into grad school? Why not take a year off? Just a couple people want to shout something out?
Just to get school over with.
Okay, to kind of continue with your momentum.
You might not go back to school.
Right. You may not go back if you get off the track. That's exactly, or people say, well, why can't you just face the real world? Or you've spent all this money on your education. I want you to, either go out and get a job that's related, get a good paying job that's totally related to your major or the career that you're pursuing. Or once you leave school, you'll never go back. Limited access to job search support once you leave school. It's amazing how few alums we see once they graduate from SPU, and I don't know if you know this, but alums have free access to our service for a year after they graduate. So, but we don't see that many. So I mean, once you leave the SPU campus, you're not as likely to come and take advantage of the resume reviews and the interviewing mock interviews and assistance that the CDC offers, as well as contacting your professors, etc. So it's more difficult to get applications and supporting materials and references together once you leave school, because it's easier when you're right here to just continue with the flow. So often a salary is non-existent or tends to be really low for some of the year-off positions, and in some volunteer service or work abroad programs, they actually require a fee for you to participate in their program. That's especially true for overseas type of opportunities. Health insurance issues. And then fear. So what we have now is I'm going to change hands, and we're going to actually have a couple people share. They took the leap of faith and took a year or two off after they graduated. And the first speaker is Greta Bergquist, who is an SPU alum and did Teach for America.
Hi, I'm Greta Bergquist. I'm a 2002 SPU grad. I was an English major here at SPU. I did British IELTS. I was an RA, did a lot of fun stuff. I was an AmeriCorps Vista member in the Seattle Public Schools bilingual department from 2002 to 2003. And it's very ironic that Patty said you should think about things before you do them, because I didn't think about anything. I was like, I think I want to go into education, so I'm going to try this Vista thing. Really, that's what I did. Which probably I shouldn't say, but it's the truth. And then from 2003 to 2005, I was a Teach for America Corps member in Baltimore, where I taught high school English. I stayed through 2006. I came back to Seattle in 2007 and currently work for a nonprofit that supports after-school programs across the state of Washington. And my work is specifically with middle and high school programs. And if you are interested, I can tell you more about it later. I also am a blogger and blog editor for The Other Journal out of Mars Hill Graduate School, which is an online theology publication. So there you go. That's a little bit about who I am and some things I've done since leaving SPU. And I guess the first couple thing I would love for you to do is, because I'm a teacher, I like making people answer questions. So if you could take a couple minutes and think about these questions, either one, you don't have to answer any or all, but if you have a paper and pen and just sketch out some ideas, and I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay, so some of you have the deer in headlights look, like, oh, I have to think about this. How many of you are seniors? Can I see? Okay. Juniors? Okay. Are there any sophomores in the room? Okay. Are there any freshmen? Okay, that's all right. So I guess two things. One, there's no right thing to do after you graduate. And some people will say, and I'm an educator, it's my passion to educate. My vocation is expanding educational opportunity. But there's this huge wide world out there, and you guys are all passionate about different things. And if you don't remember anything else from this workshop, please do something you're passionate about, and don't be like, oh, I should do AmeriCorps because it's like a good thing to do. That's the stupidest reason I've ever heard of. Like, do something you are passionate about and care about. If you're passionate about fish hatcheries, go find a fish hatchery to work at. Whatever it is, okay? That's the one thing. And then, yeah, that's the big thing, I guess I want to say. Okay, so there's some pros that Patty already talked about. And a couple of things from my experience as an AmeriCorps member. Teach for America is pretty competitive. And while I was working in the bilingual department, I got to do some things that I would not have had access or the chance to do otherwise. I got to write some grants, pretty high-level grants for the Seattle School District that passed, and so I got to put that on my resume. It was a pretty big deal. I got to meet the governor and work on this governor's initiative around advocacy for bilingual education, which was also a pretty big deal, and I would never have had the chance to do that if I hadn't done AmeriCorps. Another thing, I really learned how to live simply. I made $700 as a Vista, and I learned how to use money very wisely in my year as an AmeriCorps member. There's some cons, but I don't really think you should pay any attention to those cons. I think the pros highly outweigh the negatives, and that's just my personal opinion. But definitely you should take a year to do something that you are passionate about. So a couple things. Some national things like some U.S. things that are cool are Lutheran Volunteer. I have a lot of friends do the LVC. There's AmeriCorps, there's City Year. Both AmeriCorps and City Year have opportunities here in Seattle, as does LVC, although I believe there's an LVC house in Tacoma, which is also a good place. And then internationally, there's Mennonite Central Committee. I don't know if you guys know about SALT. There's 1 year, 2 year programs, and they're national and international, actually. The Krista Foundation is right here in Seattle. It's a great opportunity for international development stuff if you're interested in that. And then there's the Peace Corps. I guess, and then a couple other things to think about. Idealist is a big place for resources if you don't know about it in the nonprofit world. And then I don't know if you listened to Obama last night, but he mentioned the Kennedy Hatch Serve America Act, continuing funding for AmeriCorps programs. And if you're interested, and you should be, you should go check it out. But I guess, again, like there's all these different opportunities, and it really is dependent on you and what you are passionate about. So I can say a lot about education and why I think it's the place to be, because I do, but really there's a lot of different ways to impact the world. And let me see. One thing, before I go into my final thoughts, if you, like Patty said, use your alumni connections. If you know people who graduated who are doing something you're interested in, please call them and say, hey, I just graduated, or I'm about to graduate. I'm interested in this. Can you talk to me about it? People are really happy to meet you for coffee or email or connect you to somebody. And it is really all about who you know. And even if they don't go to SPU, figure out, if you find something you're passionate about, call up somebody who works in that area and say, hey, can I talk to you for 2 minutes or 10? Like really, most often they will say yes. I have never had somebody tell me no. So when I've called and done that, I'm sure people have, but really people are your best resource. And then I guess the last couple things I want to say, and I hope it doesn't come out sounding wrong or off, but if you're thinking about taking a year off to work in a coffee shop and write or something like that, I would really not recommend it. And I only say that because we don't need people to serve people coffee and write crappy poetry. And I say that with the best of intentions. And I'm a writer myself. But we really need people who are willing to dig in and do hard work. And I'm not saying it's not hard to serve coffee, but there are so many people doing it who you guys have been at SPU for 4 years. You have great brains. You're smart. Like, do something that is worth doing. And again, there's multiple ways of following what you're passionate about. Find one and jump into it. And then I just wanted to end with reading to you something, because part of my job as an editor, we get new books, and Emmanuel Katangoli is a Duke divinity prof. He wrote A Mirror to the Church about the Rwandan genocide and some lessons to be learned from it. And I was reading it yesterday coming home from Toronto, and I always pick books to read on the plane that make me cry, which is so stupid when you're on a plane, and people are like, what is wrong with that girl? But I really thought about this, actually. I thought, gosh, this seems applicable. So I'm going to read to you. Christians must take seriously the charge that we have done more harm than good in the world. If we are to continue proclaiming that the gospel is good news, we will have to change what we do. Rather than perform spiritual and social duties that prop up the status quo, we must bear witness to the reality of God's new creation by defying the powers of evil and resisting the divisions society imposes on us. The best way I know to describe what this might look like is to tell the story of a school in Rwanda where I visited in 2004. On March 18, 1997, 3 years after the genocide ended, militia attacked the secondary school at Nyange. The students had finished supper and were in their classrooms doing homework. The rebels barged into 2 classrooms and asked students to separate, Tutsi to one side, Hutu to the other, but the students refused, saying they were all Rwandans. The militia shot at them indiscriminately and threw grenades into the classroom. 13 students were killed. The victims were reclaimed by their families and buried at home, except Chantel, who was from a long distance away. She was buried at the school. Her tombstone bears this simple inscription: Chantel, born April 1975, died March 1997. She was just a month shy of her 22nd birthday when she was killed. Our world is marked by tribal, racial, and national identities. So often these labels define us, and we assume that these identities are natural. But the story of Chantel and her friends reveals the idolatrous nature of these so-called natural identities. We need Chantel's witness of resistance to remind us that God has already inaugurated a new creation. And I guess that is where I'll end. Like, this is what you should be considering as you leave this place. How are you going to remain faithful to the fullness of the gospel in a world that so desperately needs the peace and hope of Jesus? There you go.
Okay, so that's like a really hard act to follow. Good job. But we have the same passion and the same goals. So my story, oh, by the way, my name is Ina Lise. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything. My name is Ina Lise, and I actually work in the admissions office here at SPU. I'm a senior counselor for admission and multicultural outreach. And when I graduated from college, I graduated with a degree in biology with all my prerequisites ready for med school. And I went through a really amazing experience my senior year where I almost died. And I was like, what am I going to do now? Because I don't know about this whole going to medical school thing. And I heard this, the director of Peace Community Center, where I ended up working, speak about this position, this AmeriCorps volunteer position, where I could serve underrepresented youth in the Hilltop of Tacoma, which is an inner city in Tacoma. And I am the first in my family to go to college. I saw a lot of my cousins. I was born in New York. My cousins live in New York and are totally in the inner city. And I had this deep passion for these students. And I was like, well, this is going to really throw things off for me, but I really feel like God might be calling me to serve these students. And I just want to try it for a year. And so I applied and begged Bill to give me the job, although I think I had it in the bag. And I got this job working at Peace Community Center as an AmeriCorps volunteer. And I brought Noah today because he actually works for AmeriCorps, and he can tell you about how to get involved and what the different ways that you can sign up for, how you can sign up for it. But for me, that was completely life-changing when I made that decision to volunteer for a year. I learned skills that help me now every day. I learned how to fine-tune my gifting, and it completely changed my mind on what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. So I'm totally pro taking a year off and really determining what your calling is and what you're supposed to be doing, and doing something that actually serves people and is making a difference. So for me, I did a year-long service, and then I sat down with Bill, my boss, the director of the Peace Community Center, and I was like, okay, Bill, I need to go work at a hospital because I need to be sure that I don't want to be a doctor. So I got my phlebotomist certificate to draw blood, and I was like, I want this experience. I need to do this. He was like, don't do it. You need to stay another year. These kids have a relationship with you. We need you, stay another year. And I'm glad I did that too, because you can do a maximum of 2 years as an AmeriCorps volunteer. And my second year, it was even better. I fine-tuned my professional skills. I learned how to interact with those students, even though I had a similar story to them, and I felt like I could chill with them and hang out and be fine. There were a lot of things that I learned about how you really approach those students, how you can approach them in a way that they're actually receptive to you. And I learned about all the issues in a high school, because I worked at a high school, and I learned about all the politics, and I learned about what the needs are in those communities. And I learned about the Perkins, John Perkins' message of community development and leadership training, and teaching people how to really go around, people in those communities, how to sustain themselves. And then after that position, I was like, I love helping these students. I love working on college applications. I love tearing essays apart. I love all of that. And my biggest passion is to see these students go to college, because that's how their lives are going to change. That's how their communities are going to change. And so then I started looking at admissions positions. And it was great, because through admissions, I was able to continue to serve these students. I do that now in my position. But I was also able to think about ways to go to grad school. So for me, I feel like if I would have even gone the pre-med route, or decided afterwards that I wanted to just do grad school instead, like get a master's degree, I wouldn't be ready for it. I wouldn't really know what I wanted to do. I feel like I would have wasted another degree. The biology degree was great, but it doesn't apply to anything I do now. So now I'm looking at master's positions, and I know what is going to help me in what I want to do. Whereas before, I really didn't have any idea of what I would do. So having the AmeriCorps position, I didn't do grant writing. I wish I could have done that. But I did run after school programs. I ran a summer program for students. I did Young Life through it. So I did a lot of spiritual development and education. And so those skills were things that I was able to put on an application. I'm not an SPU grad, I'm a UPS grad. And because I had that AmeriCorps position, I believe that's what gave me the ability to get the job that I have now, where all these wonderful SPU grads were applying, and here's that UPS girl that has no idea what SPU is about applying. And it was the perfect fit, because the mission of SPU, I know you guys have heard it, and I talk about it all the time, but really the vision of SPU is exactly what I did through AmeriCorps, and now I feel like I really am carrying out the vision through my job. So I am a huge advocate for AmeriCorps. I think it's a great thing to do. You get a loan repayment, or you can use the money for further education, which is great, and you have this pot of money that you have 10 years to use, and you develop all these skills, and you get to serve people. And I was lucky because the community center I worked at was attached to a church. So even though it was a nonprofit and not religiously affiliated, everyone in the center was Christian. Everyone was trying to develop a student on the holistic level, so they were developing them educationally but also spiritually. So I got to really do what I love and what I'm passionate about. And so it was totally the right thing to do. And I feel the same way. Don't take a year off and just work at a coffee shop or work at Macy's or something like that, but really do something that serves people or that relates to what you want to do later on. And that will really fine-tune things for you so that you don't go into a master's program that you really aren't meant to be doing. So that's my biggest advice. And I'm gonna bring up Noah Baskett, and he's gonna share with you guys what kinds of things, how you can apply. Yeah, you take over.
Okay, now do we want to switch the...
Yeah, let's switch this over.
I get mic'd. So Annalise asked me to come up just yesterday from Tacoma.
Because I had lost this. I had the wrong phone number.
But we went to school together at UPS for 4 years, and we also served on the same AmeriCorps team for 2 years, right?
Yeah. Well, you did middle school and I did high
Oh,
school.
that's right. Yeah, in different programs. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about kind of AmeriCorps in general, as Annalise kind of said a little bit. And then also, for my particular program with the organization that I work with, let me see. There's about 20 folks in here, it looks like. And that's perfect because I've got 20 positions I need to fill in the next 5 months. So you all are you all are lucky, and I am too. So I want to talk a little bit specifically about my role and the AmeriCorps program that I run down in Tacoma, Washington, which really is the best AmeriCorps program out there. So it's true. So AmeriCorps. It's a funky name. Really, it's kind of this. It's the name that that President William Jefferson Clinton put on in 1993. Put on kind of this whole network of national service positions. There's about 73,000 positions that are scattered throughout the United States, not just in urban America, but also doing things like environmental work, capacity building for a number of different organizations, emergency preparedness, that kind of stuff. My particular program is based at the Northwest Leadership Foundation in Tacoma, Washington. The Northwest Leadership Foundation, real quick, is a faith-based nonprofit. We have leadership foundations throughout, kind of in different urban centers throughout the United States and internationally as well. Kind of what our belief is that the spiritual and social renewal of cities are linked, and so you can't just do one. You have to kind of try to tackle both, and so that's kind of that's how we work ourselves out in the community. And one of our programs is the NLF AmeriCorps team. We've got, next year we're going to have 20 members kind of scattered throughout inner city neighborhoods in Tacoma, Washington. And I don't know how much time any of you have spent in Tacoma. It's a little different than Seattle. It's it's kind of the ugly stepsister of Seattle, but it's a beautiful place with a lot of wonderful diversity, and really a wonderful place to get to know get to know a whole number of people. A mentor of mine said that the problem in the United States isn't that people don't care about the poor; it's that they don't know the poor. And so, particularly as we think of the way cities are set up, typically the poor are isolated in a couple main cities or neighborhoods. So our positions work essentially in those neighborhoods, working with the highest risk, highest needs youth. There's a huge issue of high school dropout in Tacoma School District, of middle school students that just don't make the transition to high school very well, impoverished families that don't have access to the resources that they need, and so when junior goes to class in the morning and his belly's empty, he's not going to do very well at school at all. So that's a little bit of kind of what our AmeriCorps positions try to tackle. It's a year commitment, actually 10 and a half months, so almost a year. Essentially, you're a national service volunteer, so a volunteer. You actually get a stipend, a $950 per month stipend. Not a lot of money. It's not supposed to be a lot of money because, again, the idea is you're giving something to the community. But it's enough to live on. And we also help kind of place our members in livable situations, kind of low rent situations, and we help plug people in.
Can I just interject really quick? Do I need to talk in the mic? So, living on a budget of like $900 teaches you
It's a great opportunity to learn.
It's different than being in college. Like being outside of college and learning how to live independently with $900 teaches you how to budget your money very, very well. It also kind of helps you know what it's like to be, if you're serving people in these type of cities, it helps you learn, like, this is what it's like for these students.
Yeah.
You might be way better off than them.
It's a great exercise in humility for a year or two. Even going to the food stamps office and learning how public assistance works. It's great. It's really helpful. Almost all of our members are on food assistance because it just helps for living expenses. So again, a little bit of the nitty gritty. 10 and a half months, $950 per month stipend. We also give a little bit of a stipend to help cover the cost of living. In addition to that, you stick around for 10 and a half months, you get $5,000 toward education. If you want to go back to grad school, or you got a couple of those infamous SPU tuition loans to pay off still, you can pay that off. And if you decide to do a second year like Annalise and I decide to, you get another education award on top of that. And the great thing that Obama is talking about as far as expanding national service is that they're really talking about making that a little bit bigger. So I can't promise anything, but there's a possibility that the education award might be doubled in the next couple of years. So we'll see about that. Yeah. So talk to your senator, talk to your local representative, and what else can I tell you about AmeriCorps? Our positions are mostly around education, so working in schools during the day. We have 5 positions with the Peace Community Center where Annalise worked. Those positions, for example, are in an inner city high school during the day, trying to follow students, trying to make sure that they're in classes where they're supposed to be, talking with their teachers to see if there's anything they need to be caught up on. All that kind of stuff. And after school, they run an after-school tutoring program out of the Peace Community Center. They're probably up to about 20 students per day, which is actually really full. And essentially, you're tutoring, you're helping them take the SATs, you're getting them ready for college, because a lot of these kids don't ever talk about college preparedness. So not like me, where my parents kind of expected me to go to college. A lot of these kids, there's no expectation, and they would be the first person in their family to have a college education. And so you're kind of tutoring and you're working with them. You're maybe mentoring 1 or 2 people on a weekend. Essentially trying to make a holistic change in some of these kids' lives, and then really learning in the process. Our team gathers every Friday, and we have speakers from the community come and talk. Last year we had John Perkins come and talk to us about Christian community development. So it's really an opportunity not just for you all to serve, but also to learn from a diverse community as well. So.
And a lot of jobs these days, no matter what you go into, I don't know what you want to pass out. Cultural competency is very, very important. Mm-hmm. And so the more that you experience that and really learn those skills and how to be in a diverse setting, the more that you'll be marketable for employers. So I think that's another really important skill. With
AmeriCorps on your resume, or City Year, or Teach for America, or Peace Corps, whatever it is, it really, really does make a difference. I've talked to a lot of employers the last couple of weeks trying to get our people, especially now when it's really not easy to get a job, but it really does make a difference. Employers really look at it, as well as grad programs. What's the other thing I was going to say? Oh, and you don't, the other thing I was going to say, just because, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but you mentioned Krista Foundation. Greta mentioned Krista Foundation. There's a number of places out there where you actually can, and you don't have to feel bad about leveraging the fact that you're doing community service, and there's actually payoff. The Krista Foundation offers a $1,000 scholarship for personal development, so you can just kind of go and use that money to take some class that you want to, or to attend a conference in the other side of the country, whatever. So it's actually a really great tool to kind of leverage for your all continuing education, and yeah.
And I've also, like last year, there was a woman that taught in Japan, right? Taught English in Japan. Doing things like that, traveling and doing something beneficial in another country is always something that is great too. And they have a lot of great benefits as well. Do you want me to pass out?
Yeah, so I'm gonna
want AmeriCorps stuff?
I'm gonna pass this out. Go ahead and just grab one, even if you're on the fence. This talks a little bit about what our particular program does. Again, there's AmeriCorps positions everywhere. If you want to go to New York, that's great, or if you want to stay in Seattle, that's wonderful. Tacoma is a wonderful place. It's a great place to learn. So I really, really suggest think about serving on our team. And it talks about the benefits, and it's got my contact info. So I'll pass these around.
I was just reading the first thing and I was like, oh, maybe they're just a little,
These are all in Spanish.
Oh, yeah, well, you don't need to pass those out. Cool.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna. Does anyone have any questions, especially for Greta? Those of you that maybe want to hear a little bit more about Teach for America, or and these guys as well.
What kinds of things are you thinking about doing, or what kinds of questions do you have? Yes.
Well, one thing I've heard, this is kind of just like about whether or not to go to grad school or take the year off, but one of the things that I've heard is that with the economy the way it is and uncertainty about things in the future, that maybe like we should go to grad school sooner rather than later in case the loans dry up or something like that. And I know that's kind of unpredictable, but I don't know, that's a concern I've heard voiced.
I don't think fear is ever a good way to make decisions. That's a personal opinion. But if you want to go to grad school because you want to go to grad school, then do it. Yeah. If you are making a decision out of fear, I don't think it's usually helpful.
Yeah, and there's always a way. All this, if you work at a university, there's always ways that you can get your education that way. That was another great thing for me. I knew that working at a university would help me pay for my master's program. So there's always a way. Don't do it just because you're scared that you can't afford it.
I actually heard someone talk through, who was a member of the National Association of Colleges and Employers, regarding the economic downturn, and he advised that if you were planning on going to graduate school anyway, then and you had a plan and you were on track, then go ahead, but don't go to graduate school just because there's no jobs, and so you'd rather just continue your education. So that's another answer. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. Let's give it. So I did pass out some handouts. Is it on? There we go. With some resources on them. So you got a lot of information on people that have gone out after school and done more service-related taking a year off, but on the resource list we've got, if you look, we've got some general such resources for things like the gap year, call to serve, USA Jobs, and then some service resources, domestic such as the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, international where the Peace Corps is on there, faith-based, volunteer organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, Agros, international jobs, etc. So there are really, including like maybe doing an internship or a fellowship, working for a staffing agency where you can go in and try different companies, working as a temporary worker, and then miscellaneous, going to being a nanny, a tour guide. We talk about kind of the MEC jobs. It's an opportunity to develop skills. Sales, customer service, and marketing are really key transferable skills that are valued in a lot of different industries. Being able to get experience designing, creating, organizing, maintaining. Leadership and supervisory experience, training, computer skills. These are all really valuable on your resume. We had a speaker come on Careers in International Business, and the entry skills for those types of jobs were the first line up there. He said the 3 areas to get your foot in the door for companies where you could have opportunities in international business were through sales, through customer service, through marketing, then also through data entry. So just to be aware of that. And then some practical considerations for when you do decide to take a year off before you go out into the real world or continue with your education. Contact your professors now for references, so there's not a couple-year gap between when you do your graduate and when you next contact them. So you have some references while you're fresh in their mind. Build your network. Let employers, say you have a job now, let your current employer know, I'm considering doing this where I will be gone out of the country or out of the state or whatever, so that they, when you do contact them a couple years later, it's not like, oh, I didn't know you were going to do that. And figure out ways to stay in touch with your network. Shape up your resume while you're here at SPU. Come in and take advantage of the Career Development Center and our workshops between now and when you graduate. Consider taking appropriate tests such as the GRE or the LSAT now as opposed to a couple years from now. while you're still kind of in an academic mindset. Look into short-term health insurance. There's actually, I think, a resource that's listed on the handout that I gave you. So again, in addition, improve your academic record by taking, you could be taking a few graduate level courses while you're doing some kind of a job, either online or in person, as a continuing ed student. If you do take a transitional job unrelated to your field of interest, considering volunteering in the field to build your resume. So say you're thinking about going to law school, but you really want to take a couple of years off. You could volunteer at some kind of a legal aid society. There's lots of volunteer opportunities within where you can get experience and exposure to all different sorts of the law. And then to wrap this up, we have about 5 more minutes, but you'll notice on the handout that I gave you that there's a section for kind of like, okay, well, write down a preliminary goal statement. So, at this point, what do you plan to do with the year off? Why are you deciding to pursue this transitional experience? How will this experience make you a better graduate student or a better employee? What do you want to learn from the experience? What are some obstacles you face and how will you overcome them? How will you track your experiences for use in your resume and future interviews? So this is just an example. So with what time we have left, I wanted you just to take the remaining time and come up with a goal statement. So for instance, this one is, I plan to teach English in Japan or another Asian country. I want to further develop my teaching skills, learn more about Asian cultures, gain experiences to help me decide if a master's in education is the best graduate program for me. And I'll keep track of my progress with my blog. Then here's another one that you can read to yourself. And so just take a few minutes and start to flush out some of the reasons behind why you would like to, what you'd like to accomplish taking this time off. Any questions about that?
I was wondering if you guys had any more packets, actually, if there's any extras.
There's not enough packets. Let's see if I have. I think I've got. I don't. Sorry, but I can definitely get you one after the workshop. And I also, maybe I do have. I also have some handouts which are up here, which I think I want to encourage you to take. One of them is taking time off, and the other is how to market yourself after you take some time off, especially those of you that are thinking of doing some kind of experience abroad. There's taking a time year, a gap gives you the kind of education you won't forget, and there's areas in the handout on how to make plans, how to communicate to a potential employer the benefits of your gap year. So those handouts are available as well. Any questions? We kind of had to fly through this. Actually, I have a copy here for you.
Can I clarify?
Yes.
Teach for America is not a year off. It is very difficult. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. So I just want to clarify that. AmeriCorps had its challenges, but certainly was not as difficult.
Thank you. Yeah, I know there's, that's good for students. Yeah, it's good for students to, we've had a hard time with the title.
You mentioned that when you was here as well, but what's the difference between AmeriCorps and Vista?
So that's a great question. Vista is it's like the sustainability arm of AmeriCorps, and AmeriCorps is very direct service, so it's like tutoring, it's working hands-on. Vista is a lot more things like writing grants, or it's indirect service. So you're actually limited in direct service. You're not allowed to do it.
Yeah, any other questions?
If you think of any, I have cards with me. If you have further questions, I'm happy to answer email if you'd like.
I just wondered how many of you came because you're interested in learning more about Teach for America or AmeriCorps? Raise of hands. Versus just, I'm thinking of taking a year off and I wonder what kind of resources there are. Okay, a few more like that. Okay, good. Well, and again, I want to point out the resources that I did hand out are just the tip of the iceberg. There's, I mean, some resources were mentioned that aren't on the handout that were mentioned, I think, by Greta. So this is just the beginning. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Part of the reason why I came hearing about the service stuff is there's been some people that have come here and there. Mostly, I want to go into something engineering, serving through maybe sustainability or clean water or something like that.
Yeah.
So, do you know much about any programs?
I know there's a couple nonprofits in Seattle. I don't know much about them that actually work on clean water. I'd start by Googling it, honestly, and call them up and say, what do you do? Or you could call the library. And you might laugh, but librarians are great at finding out information. And I would start there and investigate. Because that is a big need. Clean water is really important.
And did you want to do it international, on an international?
I was thinking of something like that.
Yeah, I would think, take a little bit of research and come, make an appointment with the Career Development Center, because we've got, some resources beyond what we handed out here, so we can start to point you in the right direction. But even Googling is a good way to start. Any other questions? Okay, those of you that haven't signed the sign-in sheet, hopefully most people have gotten it. I'd appreciate it. And come on up, and we've got some resources here. Thanks so much for coming, and please come see us at the Career Development Center if you have additional questions regarding taking a year off after graduation.